When was the last time you stood in a queue and did nothing? A few months ago, I was in my car at a red light, and nearby there was a bus stop. As I looked over, I saw something oddly familiar. There they were, the great British public, standing politely, patiently, and quietly in an orderly queue. But no one was looking up, they were all looking down, and I noticed that no one was speaking to the person beside them. It was just a line of human beings physically there, looking down, scroll, scroll, scroll. They were physically present, mentally completely present to a 5-inch phone screen. Now, I'm sure I'd seen something like this before, and they stood like this for the entirety of my red light. And for some reason, seeing this hit me differently this time. Now, I know what it's like when you're waiting in a queue, bored with nothing to do. That tiny itch in your brain says, I must do something. So within a second, you pull out your phone, and before you know it, you're emotionally connected into a conversation with ChatGPT for a considerable period of time. The truth is that we are avoiding boredom when we should be inviting it. Boredom and stillness has not survived recently. We've built a world without boredom and stillness. This is because we live in an attention economy where everything is driving for our attention. It is more than we realize when we're switched online all the time. We've become so averse to boredom, in fact, that we can't even stand in a queue without pulling out our phones. A survey by Virgin Media O2 found that UK British adults spend on average 4 hours a day on their phones, and nearly a third of that time is unintentional scrolling. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that technology is inherently harmful. It can connect, educate, and empower. I love technology. Having changed careers by taking a master's many years ago to successfully be a part of it in my career, I've also written about technology in a published book. However, I do think the real issue is not that technology distracts us, it is because we have become distractible more than we realize, and it has become socially reinforced. We've made boredom the enemy, when boredom actually gives us the space to be creative, to have that space for self-reflection and have new ideas. It wasn't this case years ago, though. I went into hospital years ago for some treatment, and I had resisted this hospital operation because it was going to take me out of my everyday life from work and social. So I really resisted it. And after this operation, I was resting in hospital and I had no known routine at all. It was a really difficult period, and there was no sense of progress at first. I was really frustrated at being taken out of my everyday life in the busy hustle and bustle in the city of London, away from what was known to me, my work and social life. So I decided to do what I couldn't do before in this period I called boredom mode. I decided to pick up things that I couldn't have time for previously. So, books, podcasts, endless scrolling, and more daytime television distractions than I care to admit. In fact, I knew more about British daytime television programmes about renovating someone else's property than what I wanted to build next in my own life. But in time, this also runs out. Distraction has a limit. And in the stillness, I realized something because all of these things had stopped working. and I could see everyone around me was busy in their going about their day-to-day lives, and I was feeling really uncomfortable. And when everything becomes monotonous, there is nothing left but the quiet, just myself and my thoughts. There was no noise, no distraction, and no escape. But however, this was when something shifted. I realized when I was in the hospital bed that I didn't have a laptop or a phone. But I didn't need these things because my mind started to think again. My mind wandered aimlessly, and it gave me that chance to think creatively, to invite this space and become curious with it. And I brought new insights into my world. Because that's what boredom does. It gives you the chance for your mind to wander, to become creative, and to embrace these periods for self-reflection. I actually found my mind was working in a free-flowing way, and I really started to enjoy that time and space. And today we live in a world that is always online, but it's our questioning that really creates meaning. That part is still ours. What happened was, I remember a visit from a very special friend who some years before was a mentor to me, someone who seemed really wise and unusually calm. So I asked her, how do you always maintain a clear head? You always seem to have the right answers and know what matters whenever I come to you with a problem. She said something that I've never forgotten. She smiled and said to me, I let my mind breathe. First, I didn't really understand her, but then she went on to explain to me that she didn't let any second or minute go by in boredom and reach for distractions. She went for walks without headphones sometimes, sat in silence, and always thought about answers before immediately going online and searching. This made me realize something. And she also said something else that really surprised me during this conversation. She said to me, if your mind is never quiet, how can it ever hear an original thought? When I heard this, I realized that during my hospital recovery, I had been treating boredom and stillness like enemies. And this was the missing space that my mind needed to think, reflect, and create. So what can we do? The next time you reach for a distraction, especially your phone, pause. Just for 10 seconds, let your mind wander. Don't fill that space, because this is a really important part that helps your creativity and gives you that space for reflection. And something important begins when you do give yourself that space, in not reaching for anything else. As we move through this massive artificial intelligence revolution, there is one thing that matters more than ever: retaining what makes us human. And also notice what comes up in that pause. It may be a question you haven't answered, or an idea that never had the space before, or perhaps it's a thought you have been avoiding. We don't need to act immediately on any of our thoughts, just notice. Enjoy the pause. Neuroscience tells us something fascinating. When our minds wander, we are not doing nothing. We are engaging our brain networks linked to creativity, future planning, and insights. And here is an important point. Creativity is what allowed us humans to solve problems, to come up with new ideas, to imagine possibilities and change the world. Remember, if your mind is never quiet, how can it ever hear an original thought? Because in the silence between distractions, this is where your next idea begins. Thank you.